Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Scott from Syscom. Today, I have with me Scott Gingold from Lehigh Valley Technology. Also together with us today is Elliot from Pax8, who's going to give us some insight on additional things and steps that we can make with Microsoft. So it's a pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Scott Huxley, Managing Principal here at Syscom Business Technologies, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I know we're going to go through some content here. If you guys have questions, we have a chat box in which people can drop those questions in today. We welcome that. It makes the experience of a webinar engaging for everyone when people have questions. So please drop them into the chat box. With no further ado, I want to turn it over to Scott at Lehigh Valley Technology and introduce himself. Scott, good morning to you. How are you doing today?
I am fabulous, Scott, and thank you very much for that introduction. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Not only is this a informational packed presentation today, but you're getting two Scotts for the price of one, and you can't get that in this economy everywhere. So you're getting double your value today.
Yes.
And not only that, but you get lunch and you get great content. One of the reasons, there's many reasons why we're doing this presentation today, but part of it is our commitment to continuing education. And that's due to the fact that when you look at things like the Microsoft infrastructure and systems, there's so many capabilities and there's so many offerings, and they're ever changing, especially in this world that we're living in of security and productivity, work from home. We're all looking for better ways to be more efficient, to be more secure. And so we're delighted that Elliot has agreed to put this on for us today and present this fine program. So buckle up, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a very action-packed hour. As Scott mentioned, we welcome your questions, we welcome your input, and your questions will help us make this an even better presentation. So I'll turn it back to Scott and we will move forward.
Yeah, amen to that. And as you can see, one Scott definitely more better dressed than the other one. So maybe one Scott is infinitely better than the other, but we'll see. Scott, appreciate it as always. Good to have you with us. Elliot, pleasure to have you with us, and looking forward to the content, and looking forward to people that are on the call today getting a better understanding of what's capable, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, as you guys mentioned, my name is Elliot. Unfortunately, I'm not the third Scott on this call, so you only are getting those two. We can only have two was the max number of the number of Scotts on this call. I work for a company called Pax8, who's closely aligned to Microsoft, and my role within the company is completely focused on Microsoft. In true Pax8 fashion, just want to give you a quick fun fact about myself. I am, in my belief, the largest Microsoft expert here in the world. And that's not wide, that's tall. I'm 7 feet tall. So if you do have anyone who is taller than me, who is an expert in that field, please send them out here to sunny Denver, Colorado. We'll do the quick back-to-back, and we'll see who truly holds the title. But enough about myself. I'm really excited to be able to share this content with you. Before we get started, I am just going to have a quick poll to gauge who's currently working with Microsoft. So we'll just take a quick minute to have that poll up, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, we've got some poll questions that's going to come up here. Vital part for engagement, right? Because we want to try and cater the conversation towards the people that are on the call today, in terms of capabilities, in terms of where you're at as well, and it will help us all kind of steer some of the conversation, as to where you are. And I think everyone's in a different place, I would say. Has been my take.
All right, we are 100% completed on there, so we'll share out these results here. So it looks like from what we saw on our side, 100% of people are using Microsoft. Obviously makes a ton of sense. It is the go-to thing for business applications that we're all familiar with. What I want to talk a little bit more about, though, is where Microsoft sees this going here in the future. Yep. So, just want to put some framing together. We're all familiar with, Word, having our Excel spreadsheets and everything different, but Microsoft is starting to transition into what they're calling the modern workplace. Now, again, just to frame this for you, to tell you what modern workplace is, it's a way people work today for their different tools and collaboration that are all powered by cloud. So getting rid of that on-prem infrastructure, having those on-prem applications or anything like that. And also, how do we manage this distributed workforce? Either due to COVID or due to changing preferences of employees, how do we take advantage of all these tools that are within Microsoft without having to go and have this huge tech sprawl where we're ordering different things from all these different companies, which can both be a management headache and also cause some friction within your teams where they're not able to work together as efficiently as possible. So again, that's all we're around. This is Microsoft's fun terminology that they love to have, but just keep in mind as we go through this that anything on Modern Workplace is where Microsoft is moving here in the future to help your businesses run more efficiently and work with your employees more effectively. So just kind of, again, some more framing on what we're looking at here moving forward. Some data we've done on our side as well as Microsoft. It's estimated that over 26% of American workforce is going to be working remotely through 2022. That is the rest of this year. The number is forecasted to stay about the same for 2023 as well. A number of people are wanting to continue this hybrid workspace at least, if not completely stay from home. And then the second point that we've been talking to our customers and partners is that distributed workforce is becoming a necessity for their business continuity. Now, that doesn't mean, where there's a hurricane coming into Florida and, we need employees in Pennsylvania to pick up the slack. It's not just something like that, but it's also when it comes to talent acquisition. We've seen that a lot of our companies that we work with have employees that they typically have in, the greater Philadelphia area, or, maybe you're working in a small town in Michigan. That they can now go and access labor markets that are throughout the country, and they can be able to get skilled employees that maybe they've never met in person, but still can be contributors to what they're trying to do move forward. And so the other question that comes with the new normal is how do we make sure those employees that, again, you may not ever have met in person are enabled, organized, and empowered as well, and then keep their productivity up as well. And make sure they're part of the company culture is also a huge piece of that. And then so a couple of questions when we're going through, and we did a survey of, Microsoft did a survey of their 1,000 different small and medium businesses throughout the country. These were the three biggest things that they came back with, what their concerns were moving forward into this new normal. The first one is how can we do this distributed work better? We have employees working from multiple locations, be that from 2 to all throughout their town or the United States, some even working with employees that are outside of the United States. So how can we make sure that they're still part of the company, contributing in the way we want to, how the way we want to? So that was one of the biggest questions that came up. The second one was, how can we maintain or even increase security for what we're currently doing? So now that not everyone is on our internal network, not inside the building, how can we make sure that they are protected? And this comes at the same time where there's increased phishing and ransomware. And now that these employees are working from anywhere, there's a multitude of personal and mobile devices that they're accessing company data on. I think we all can agree that here moving forward, that data truly is one of the most important resources that a company has. So making sure that either individuals in their company or bad actors aren't able to access that information is pertinent for continuing on business continuity. And then finally, in the times we're on, how can we manage services and costs? As I mentioned before, the fact that you can have a bevy of different options on how you can go about and do some of these distributed works means there can be a ton of different solutions that maybe people aren't as skilled on internally or take too much resources on making sure that solution is running correctly. And that is both increasing your costs on what you're paying just to have those services, as well as to keep them up and running efficiently. So again, these were the three main things that we talked to from business owners across the country that they were concerned about. If anyone has those same concerns, you're in the right place and you're in a good company on that side. But just keep those in mind as we go through this presentation, that these are the three things that we're really going to be focused on and how we can help make this easier for you here moving forward. And let me talk a little bit on the first half when it comes to collaboration or anything on that side. So there's three things that I think we often overlook when we're thinking about Microsoft when it comes to the modern work. And again, what has really been setting this apart as we move forward. The first thing I think we're very familiar with is Teams. Now everyone thinks of Teams as our video conferencing, our talking back and forth in quick chat messages, sharing documents through Teams that we're able to do that. But I would argue that Teams is a lot more than just that as well. And I'm going to use ourselves as an example here at Pax8. So Pax8 has a number of different groups, and this is something that can be set up for your company as well, where we're talking about just having something. I'll use something similar that we just had recently. We have the Avalanche going through the Stanley Cup playoffs. At this time, there is a group in there called Tickets Galore, where employees can share tickets back and forth from each other. So that's something that is going to be geared towards collaboration as well as your company culture in there as well. So maybe you have a women's business leaders group, they meet for lunch or they go do different projects for you. You have a diversity and education portion of that, the team. So don't think as teams as just, hey, we're going to meetings and we're going to do chow internally. Think of it as a way to reinforce your culture that you're doing as well inside of your organization. So it's a sprawling solution. It's definitely a place where if you're working on something, Zoom, RingCentral, even GoToMeeting that we're on currently now, it's something that can be brought in and simplified and make sure your employees are very well versed on it instead of having a number of sprawling different solutions there. Now, the second point I want to talk about here is SharePoint. Now, SharePoint really is the backbone of Teams, but I think it's also the backbone of how you're able to disseminate information across your organizations. Now, SharePoint is something that you can easily share documents internally through different employees or even through different business groups within there. You also can set up where you're sharing with different companies that you may work with securely and efficiently. I think the biggest thing to understand about this SharePoint is, a lot of times we're emailing out documents or something like that, it might not be the most secure way to do that. Now with SharePoint, having protection rules, having compliance policies, this documents and this information are only getting to the correct people at the correct time. So again, it takes out a lot of the guesswork of who's trusted how this document, who's not trusted the document. I don't want Linda in accounting get into the HR personnel files. I don't want our sales team looking at our finance reports. Now through SharePoint, like I said, you can keep that segregated while still having the information available to those people want it. So a huge piece of that. And then a final one, which is probably one of the least used portions of the modern workplace, is Power BI. So Power BI is business analytics at a platform that is not going to go ahead and break the bank for you. So it's able to use information that's already ready available in your Microsoft ecosystem to display that and be able to take actionable business decisions on it. It's something that is far easier than setting up a complete ERP system or something of that nature while still having those actionable items. So again, it's something that's completely underutilized, but can easily be set up and accessed with one of your partners, and something that can be easily trained internally for you to set up your own databases and your own visuals to make sure it's useful to yourselves. So again, those are some of the high points on modern work that seem to be completely underutilized and not optimized for what a lot of our business customers are doing at the moment. And then I'm going to talk over here in a second about the other half of this, which I've alluded to, which is security. So we're going to take a quick break and do another poll question just to gauge your feelings on that side. So I'll turn it over to the poll, and then we'll just take a minute or two to get the results on that.
I just want to echo one of your comments there, Elliot, about Teams and SharePoint. It is a real ecosystem which you can live under one pane of glass, and a lot of times I see it too is where only a small portion of it is being used. Only, you could argue, 20%, when in fact, with a little bit of guidance, you can use things like OneNote within Teams, and you can have those channels that you mentioned, Elliot. We in our organization, we use a very similar structure, right? We have leadership channels, we have general channels. Especially for us too, we have some remote employees too. It really helps build the culture. So it's not just tech for tech's sake. It's also assisting with your culture, which is something that you touched on earlier.
Yeah, everybody obviously wants the newest and shiniest thing, but these tools in here can eliminate a lot of that going on, getting too much of that sprawl. So there's a ton. We're just scratching the surface of what Team's capable of. So appreciate you bringing that up.
And Elliot, if I could just interject, you mentioned about work from home, and we all know what prevalence that came to during COVID. And what COVID also proved to us, you just never know. I mean, you mentioned the avalanche coming through, having your parade today. That can be a disruptive event, but also look at our economy right now. We're hearing of more employers that are saying, well, we were back in the office because COVID sort of settled down, but with gas prices and such being what it is, we're going to do that hybrid that Scott mentioned. So you just never know. And as a lot of businesses were caught off guard by COVID, now as we look at the different productivity tools that we get from Microsoft, it's a great time to be ready and prepared for whatever may be next.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the huge thing there is obviously to having your partner that is able to enable you to do this. So that's training and then users and training champions within your organization, and that's what we're all here to do. And we took a look at our poll question. It looks like all of the above is kind of the big winner, which makes sense. All can be huge factors in going through, and that's why security is so top of mind on everyone right now. So let's go ahead and transition here. I just want to talk talk a little bit about the threat landscape. I'm sure a lot of people are very aware, so I will not bemoan the point. But just letting you know, again, this is the survey from Microsoft, is 1/3 of all cyber attacks are targeted at small and medium businesses. That number is actually increasing as time's going on. A lot of times bad actors do think that maybe our small and medium businesses are easier targets and to go after them and still cause some chaos. Second one is going through and surveying that most of our small and medium businesses we talk to do not feel they currently have the internal tools to combat if they were under attack by a bad actor there. And then finally, there has been a 20% increase in phishing emails detected in Microsoft's ecosystem from January to December of last year. If you can imagine how large Microsoft ecosystem is, that is billions of emails that are coming through on the phishing side. So that is a ton on that side. And it's really changed the focus on how can we educate ourselves internally to both harden our ecosystem and also educate our employees, because we all know the weakest link is the employee at the end of the day clicking on a link they don't want to. My background is in financial services, and I unfortunately ran into a counterpart of mine who did fall for this one time, sending out a wire of over $50,000 on a phishing attack. So it's something that I've personally ran into and that didn't go too well for that employee and was not a good look for our financial services company as well. So it happens all the time, even to smart people, where they are either rushed or didn't have enough cup of coffee in the morning and do something they're not supposed to do. So being able to limit their ability to have those mistakes happen is huge on avoiding this and causing a kind of financial gain or reputational loss on that side. And then finally, I'll just mention on the threats landscape is we've talked about here before, is that since they are working from home, from different networks, from a coffee shop down the street, there is different ways they can get in there. They're not on the same network. How do we protect them here moving forward? So engage here to answer some of these questions as we move forward. The first one is talking about combating these phishing attacks. So we have an employee, as we said before, who email a link to a secure document from a well-known organization. They enter their creds to do it, and then without fail, they fall into a phishing attack. So what Microsoft is doing inside of this ecosystem is something they call Defender for Office. Now, Microsoft has a terrible way of naming all their things the same thing, but this Defender for Office is focused completely on email security. So it's going to be really your last line of defense. What the other tools you're using for security, that if you're having those malicious attachments come in, it's something that's going to sandbox those, make sure that they're not using an address that is very similar to whatever company you're working with. If you're getting something from Bank of America, it's not Bank of the Americas that come through on those ones for those emails, to make sure that, again, a lot of these emails aren't even getting to your employees for them to make that mistake to click on these links. And again, this is all part of what comes with your modern workplace. It's just making sure that it's enabled to the way that's specific to what your business cases are, and make sure that certain people who need extra protection can have different versions of this as well to make sure they're more protected. And again, that's what your partners here are here to enable. Next challenge that we've been running into is access to company data. Obviously, we need these employees have access to work data as they work from home or on their mobile devices. Bad actors outside the circle of trust, or even employees inside the organization who either are disgruntled or just don't know any better, are getting access to this work data that they shouldn't have. And so the biggest thing that actually has had success is the rollout and implementation of multi-factor authentication. In fact, 90% of identity attacks from bad actors have been thwarted by multi-factor. And there's a number of different ways to go through that, either on Microsoft authentication applications or other sources to be able to do that through, that can add that layer of security on that side. And then going even deeper is making sure you have this conditional access. And the example I like to give is, I was flying out to New York City and was, there for that time. Someone tried to sign in San Francisco because we had these conditional accesses policies set up for impossible travel. It was able to stop that one. It knew that I can't be in New York and then an hour later be in San Francisco, so it didn't allow that to go through and happen. So it's something also you can do if you want to have geolocations set up, where geofencing is to be set up, where only your employees in a certain area, or my remote employees are working in Minneapolis. So if they're if they get a login outside of Minneapolis, it's not able to happen. They're able to not have that and block that moving forward. So, very useful tools. It's something that can get extremely granular and extremely detailed on that one. So you can work with your provider to make sure what's set up is correct for you, and take advantage of that. Finally, another thing on this side is the work on the personal devices. Employees are using their personal phones. I do it all the time. I'm sure everyone else here is checking their emails when they probably should be doing something better, or hanging out with their family, as well as devices maybe they're on their own personal laptop as well. And the solution behind that Microsoft has come with is Intune. I'm not going to get too in the details because it gets a little bit dense at times, but really what Intune is a mobile device management. And so that allows you to make sure if your employees are using these personal devices with company information on them, and either that device was lost, stolen, they try to run away with the data as well, there's functions on there that allows us to be remote wiped and essentially taking that company data, or if it's a company issued device that was taken, completely turn that laptop into a brick and make it essentially useless on that side as well. And there is one more deeper function of Intune that I will touch on as well, and that's called autopilot. Now, why it's important to talk about autopilot for you is when we've been talking about this distributed workforce, is how do we get them the equipment they need and the things they need to be successful, to be part of the company, to be engaged. What this allows you to do is essentially ship a computer to someone and have it completely ready to go for your organization. So without them having to come with the office, without them having to go through cumbersome setup processes, they can have that company device delivered to them out of the box. They sign in with their Azure AD account and they are up and running and working for you. So that means this onboarding process for new employees is cut down and taking potentially days for them to get everything set up to literally being minutes out of the box. They're ready to go in the correct groups, in those Teams groups we talked about, correct access to the SharePoint documents they need, and they're off and running. So, being able to have that downtime be minimalized is huge. So that's the other side of it. So you both have the security as well as the optimizing your cost and reducing downtime for your employees that comes with Intune. Finally, accidental data loss and data breaches. So I can't tell you how many people will pick up USBs at some kind of different events or anything, and go ahead and put them into a computer, or they're going to try to be a bad actor when they leave, and they say, hey, I want to take this company information list of who are our vendors with us, or who we call out onto with this USB. By having this Azure information protection and data loss, you can completely negate the fact that you could put USBs in. But again, it goes further. As we talked earlier on those Teams data, in SharePoint, if someone is trying to send a document that has personal identifying information on it, either outside the organization, someone you don't want, or even inside the organization or you don't want, Azure information protection is what's there to make sure that is not allowed. It's especially pertinent too if you're working on any kind of compliance, be it FINRA, HIPAA. We're working with CMMC, with the DoD or the government, making sure you have a data loss prevention and information protection policy in place is a lot of time paramount to avoiding any kind of compliance issues. No one likes to deal with compliance agencies. They're notoriously difficult to work with. So being able to show them immediately if they come in that you are all set and ready to go avoids kind of lengthy audit processes there. So a huge piece. Again, it's something that can be personalized for each individual company depending on what your needs are. And that's what your partners are here to do, to make sure you're on the right solution and have the right protection policies in place. And then I'm going to have one more poll question here before we move on to our last couple points. So we're just going to put that up for one more second and hear a little bit more from you.
I was going to say, while we wait for some of the poll results, Elliot, what I see a lot is where someone is using maybe Office 365, Microsoft Business, but they're only implementing a very small portion of it. They got moved to Office 365 by someone, and they're on Office 365, but they don't have multi-factor authentication, to your point. They don't have some of the other things, which is kind of the scope of our conversation today, to get the most out of it, right? Because a lot of times you're on Office 365, but that's about it.
It happens all the time, and we see it a lot where, like I said, we move to Microsoft, we're good, right? We're set.
Yeah.
You still need to make sure these policies are in place, and as your landscape changes, that you continue to do it. Just like compliance is an ongoing process, security is an ongoing process as well. And that's why number of people work with other partners, just because as we've seen by what Microsoft data is, almost 2/3 of small and medium businesses don't think they have the resources internally to do that. And honestly, I would rather work with someone whose job every day is to make sure we're making things that are optimized than having my resources be dedicated to that, when I can be dedicating my resources to whatever makes us revenue and what makes we specialize at and what we're good at and why we came into the business, than doing tech things. So again, that's why we see this and why we see these partnerships on this one is, Microsoft has this amazing ecosystem. Who can help us make sure we're doing everything we can to squeeze every dollar out of it, because we have these services even if we're not using them, and that's baked into the price, and we want to make sure that we're secure as well.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned policies and since you mentioned Intune, it's probably a good idea to also mention, nowadays many employees don't want to carry two devices. They rather BYOD, bring their own device. And it's really important from an HR perspective that your company has policies in place that if you're installing Intune on a personal device, that it's made clear in the HR manual, and of course the employees sign off on it. And I think sometimes employers in a rush to do these things forget about that or don't think it's relevant, but it can be extremely important and relevant and saves you some headaches down the road.
100%. It's always better to get things in and do them right, the first time, and then it doesn't mean we can always go back and rectify things, but having those things in place before something happens is always better than going back afterwards and having an event, be it phishing attack, ransomware, even if it's a minor thing, than trying to fix it afterwards. So can agree more on that side. And looks like, go ahead, sorry.
And you mentioned about the different tools. We should also let the audience know there is a plethora of available training out there through different vehicles to do it. Self-guided, is a tool we use that allows users to have self-guided training, because sometimes these products can be a little bit overwhelming when you first hear about them. Scott mentioned integrating, OneNote and Teams and doing this and that, which is fantastic. But it can be a little daunting to somebody, and there are plenty of tools and services out there that users can get training from, and that training will allow your organization to be more productive, more efficient, and ultimately more profitable too.
Perfect. Yeah, and we're looking at the poll here. Obviously, it looks great where 56% of people have already done some optimization or going through and doing security assessments, which is awesome. Definitely above the average we see when we talk to a lot of customers and partners. So the fact that you're already doing that, it means you're ahead of the game on that side. Like I said, ongoing process. You want to make sure you continue to do these assessments. And those who don't or don't know where to start, you have two great resources here that can help you going through and do that and make sure you're in the correct place for your environments. But let's continue on. This is what I like to call the probably the most important slide of this entire presentation, and probably the thing that's been the most pertinent to everyone here on the call. It is really that last point where our survey went through and that is most important, and that's managing costs and services. Obviously, we want to make sure that every dollar we're spending on our technology stack is something that's useful in helping us empower our employees, become more efficient, do things in a more secure manner. So again, having someone who can help you navigate through that is huge. But let me just talk about a couple of these points. And the first one is what I've talked about a little bit before, is that kind of sprawl when it comes to your tech stack. With moving into the modern the workplace right now with this distributed work model, a lot of times it's easy to go after the shiniest new tool, and all of a sudden you have 15 tools that might be underutilized or are not being utilized by your employees that you're paying for. So being able to consolidate on a platform versus buying all these different standalone products can be a huge benefit to you, both on a training aspect and an expense. Again, I'm not bashing on Zoom by any means, but you're paying $15 a month for Zoom services while you're looking at your license that has a Teams enablement as well as all of your line of business applications at something like $20 to $22. So right there, you're already reducing costs. Again, not bashing on Zoom by any means, but it just is an example of how that consolidation can help you. And more so on that cost consolidation is the education piece. Scott mentioned there's a lot of services out there that can do that training, both free and then there's paid versions of that as well. But being able to standardize on one set of tools and be able to make sure your employees are informed on how those utilized can cut down on a lot of the noise on what's going on that side, and make sure you're not spending money on a tech stack that could be spent somewhere else or spent on security or something that might be more important to what you're doing on a day-to-day. And the second portion on here is saving on automation and process improvements. It does tie in a lot with that first one on having that education where employees are comfortable using that. But also it's, hey, we have all these spreadsheets we have in our Excel format. How can we get this in that's a little bit more user-friendly or accessible to all of our different employees who need it? Sure, it's fine to email around, but you can utilize a tool such as Power BI to even automate these processes and make sure when those business decisions come up, you have the most pertinent information that has been scraped daily or whenever that update is set for those ones on that information. And like I said, a lot of times it's much easier setting up this Power BI, this Powerflow platform than it is going out and just purchasing a complete standalone tool that might not have access to that information that you guys are currently creating inside your ecosystem. Next one is, reduce total costs at risk. So, as we're going through and doing our calculations on what it's costing our company for our tech stack, a lot of times we just look at the front cost. It costs us, like I said, $15 for the Zoom license. It costs us XYZ for this. And what we're not going through and looking at is what is our total cost on risk because of the system we're on. Sure, it's a lot cheaper to be on a free Google email service, but what is my risk now because I don't have any of these security functions in there? What's the cost to me if I'm going to be down because something has happened to this environment? I know these two have a great tool, which is your downtime calculator, which I'm sure they'll share with you after our conversation here. But being able to understand that, can I handle being down for a day? Can I manage if a ransomware, a phishing attack happens? What is that risk? The likelihood of that happening versus the cost and coming down to my tech stack. So it's a huge point that I think it's overlooked a ton when we're having these conversations. Like, well, this Microsoft solution costs XYZ versus this one. Well, what is your risk involved in doing it that way? And when you're looking at security, Microsoft has made huge strides on that side to become a lot of security company. So as we all know, a layered approach is best, but having that as your foundation, can reduce that risk quite a bit. And then finally, IT administration and employment savings. That's why Syscom and Lee Valley Technology are here. And that's why, they're working with someone like Microsoft and Pax8. Just making sure that you're enabled so you can focus on those higher value activities, as we mentioned before, is huge. No one likes to be messing around with their email solution and not have that working while you're trying to do business, interact with your customers at the end of the day. We know that's why you're in business is not to play around with Microsoft. It's to make sure you have the best information and it's set up in the correct way possible. And again, that is the whole pitch around why you would work with one of our partners here. And I'm not sure if there's anything more, Scott, you wanted to kind of say on that last point.
I'll turn it over here to Scott here shortly too for his thoughts, because both of us spend time talking to people really about optimizing what they have. And again, I want to kind of just echo what you said before about a lot of times people are using, they're using Dropbox, they're using Zoom, like they have this conglomeration of technology that's been added to over the years. And you brought up a really good point that a lot of times people are already organizations are already paying for licenses that deliver a lot of what you've spoken about today. You know, Teams and OneNote and SharePoint, they're already paying for those things. A lot of times they're not being utilized. And yes, to your point, their money is being spent elsewhere and it's not really being optimized. So I encourage everyone on the call today to explore that, to try and move towards one pane of glass where possible. And I'm curious on Scott's thoughts on that too, in terms of familiarity and similarity in terms of trying to reduce the amount of technology that we have, right, Scott?
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I'll take a more pragmatic view from the businesses that are on with us today is, if you're not doing this, there's a good chance your competitors are, and let's be honest, we all have competitors, right? So who's ever utilizing their technology in the most efficient manner is probably going to be the one that's the more successful, because Scott often talks about people get their information from various sources, many different channels, and consume the content in many different ways. Well, the thing of it is, people are less and less patient nowadays. So when they want information, they want answers, they want it quickly. So if you can take this Microsoft environment and have it built into one central repository, for lack of better words here, you're going to be able to deliver the information, the answers, and the information people need more quickly. And that's going to increase your sales. It's going to increase your importance to your current clients, to your current customers, and allow you, again, to be more efficient, which is obviously a big goal of this whole presentation today, is efficiency, productivity, and of course, profitability. So that's kind of my take on this for the moment.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very, very good point.
Really appreciate your insights on everything there. That being said, I just want to come back to where we started, and I want this as your takeaway as you move forward and you talk internally and have those discussions is ask the question, how can we do this distributed work better? What support, what tools do we need to make sure we're a leader in this? Again, just for every reason that we said, efficiencies, having better connection with your customers, with your employees, making sure your culture you have there is still in place no matter where people are working from. How can we maintain or increase our security posture? The number of bad actors and the number of attempts to compromise is continuing to increase. We need to just see the reality of that and understand how can we protect ourselves. How can we make sure we're doing the correct things, that if something happens, we're not the victim of something on that side. And then finally, a huge important piece is how can we manage these services and costs? Are we doing everything correctly at the moment? Is there something we can be doing differently, as Scott said, as maybe the guy down the street or in the next town over is doing? How can that be a competitive advantage for us to be able to not have to pay for services or something in our tech stack that we don't need? So again, this is just what I want to take away and have those discussions internally to think about harder. And then, like I said, Scott will certainly follow back up and make sure that we're doing that. I'm going to leave this open for Scott to have final remarks here really quick, and then we will open up some time here for questions as well.
Yeah, and we covered a lot of good ground today as quickly as we could to keep people engaged. Look forward, hopefully there's some questions. If not, then we'll let people cut loose, obviously with the fourth coming up. But I just want to encourage everyone on the call, to engage, which is really what you said, Scott, myself, and learn how you can optimize what you have. Yes, you want to keep it secure too, but it's also today's conversation really is about, and Scott touched upon it in the sense of profitability, because we can tie all these things together when we're operating in all these different applications. If we can consolidate that, and then we can leverage automation and we can leverage what we have because it's so underused, it should have an impact on the bottom line of the business, which was what Scott was mentioning. So that's very important, probably not talked about enough, but if you're using technology the right way, it will have an impact on your bottom line of your business. That's why that's one of the reasons why we're all here today.
Absolutely. And we understand that, as Scott alluded to, this may not be the environment where you want to ask questions, whether it's in the chat or verbally, but we, as Scott said, encourage you, sit down and talk with us. You know, we love to talk to people, to learn more about what their concerns are, what their needs are. It's not just, you know, hey, this isn't working, come fix it. It's more proactive. You know, when you look at a company like Syscom or Lehigh Valley Technology, we really are solutions providers. You know, it's not just, you know, here we're trying to sell you a service. How can we make your organization, what can we do to help you improve, to grow? Because to be blunt, you know, being selfish about it, the more you grow, the better for our businesses respectively, of course. But we want to see you succeed because your success is our success, as I said. So please don't hesitate to ask us questions, whether it's here in this forum or offline, privately. You know, that's how we want to help you. We want to help you succeed. We want to help you to grow, and we want you to understand, again, the vast array of services and capabilities, not only from the Microsoft environment, but along with the other tools and services that each of our companies provides as well to help you.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Could not agree more. The key is engagement, right? Reaching out to people like Scott, myself. We're always happy to give advice and insight. You know, whether you're a client or not, it's really about you know, it's all about you know, the best return for the people that are on the call today, the best return for investment. So yeah, always happy to be a resource for sure.
And the one thing that you will find with whether it's Syscom or Lehigh Valley Technology is, you know, you may ask for a solution that we can't provide and it's out of the Microsoft realm. It may be just something, we're going to be candid with you about that too. Again, our job is to help you to be more successful, not to try and put you into a box that may not fit. You know, it would be like me trying to wear a size small shirt. Trust me, you may not see me on camera, although you saw the picture at the beginning. That's just not going to work. So our job is to find the right solution for you. And if we can't, we're going to tell you that as well. So again, that's why we encourage the transparency and the openness, because all of us on this call are committed to making our industry better, which frankly, companies like Scott's and mine, we sometimes swim in a sea that's not always clean waters. So we want to make sure that we're delivering to you the right solutions that are going to benefit you. So with that, I'll just say from my perspective, we appreciate everyone's time today. We know we're on the precipice of the holiday weekend. We know that you probably have 1,000 things on your mind today. So we, on behalf of myself and Lehigh Valley Technology, thank you for participating. Thank you, Elliot, for a great presentation. And Scott, thank you for including me on this. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I could not agree more. It's been a pleasure to have everyone on the call today. We will make this available for people that want it. So if you want to share it with someone that you feel they get value from it, obviously that's why we do these things. I hope that people today got value from it and understand what's possible and what's capable. So we'll make that readily available for obviously people that have attended. Again, you know, just as Scott mentioned, personally, I appreciate you attending. If you were here, you were personally invited either by myself or by Scott. So again, from both of us, we appreciate people's attendance, and yeah, it's been a pleasure. And we look forward to doing more of these things as we try and give insight as to how you can get more out of what you have, or at least optimize what you have currently. So I want to thank Elliot and thank everyone on the call today, both on the panel and also those that have attended. We appreciate your time. We hope you got value for sure, and we look forward to doing another one very soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday weekend.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.